It is another edition of the On the Mic podcast, and super excited to talk to my next host for the first time on this show, and plenty to talk about. I feel like we picked a perfect day. He is a producer and host of Sports Grid Hit the Bell with Mathias Berbel. He is Mathias Berbel. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing great, brother. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be on, man. Let's chat some MMA.
Yeah, I mean, plenty to talk about, like, especially, this morning we wake up and the news is official. Tyson Fury will face Francis Ngannou in October. And what I believe is a exhibition, but is a full-on straight boxing rules match. I mean, you talk about a guy who bet on himself. Before we even talk about the fight, you talk about a guy who bet on himself. I don't know if there's a bigger jackpot than Francis Ngannou right now.
No, there's not, man. You know what? He left the UFC on a mission. He thought he could get it done. His management told him we'll get it done. He trusts the process. He believed in himself. He believed in his team. And look what happened. This guy literally won everything he needed to do in the UFC except fight Jon Jones. And at the same time, he probably thought at the end of the day, do I want to fight Jon Jones or do I want to fight Tyson Fury? And at the end of the day, I think he told himself, I want to fight Tyson Fury. And that's why he got that fight, man. He wanted what, and he got it. And he could have fought Jon Jones too, but at the end of the day, he got Fury. And I think that's a jackpot, It's payday, boys.
That's an interesting point too, because you got to ask yourself, right? Just like all lightweights, you can talk about Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, and all the other lightweights. When Khabib was there, you were like, all right, we acknowledge that we want to be champion, but you've seen what this guy has done to everyone. And I'm not saying Francis Ngannou is okay with not fighting Jon or not trying to prove that he is the baddest man on the planet. But maybe at some point, like you said, he goes, you know what? There'd be a bigger victory on my resume than Jon Jones, and that's Tyson Fury. And you could say he did it for the money, and he did it to prove a point, whatever the case may be. But the fact remains, if Francis Ngannou goes in there and let's just even say knocks down Tyson Fury, he wins no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Paul brothers. You know what I mean? Like the gimmick in the whole boxing world, like, oh, they suck. They're not going to do this. They're not going to do that. Well, turns out Tyrone Woodley got knocked the hell out, right? And I think right after he did that, he won. Doesn't matter what else happened after that. He knocked out a welterweight champion, UFC welterweight champion with heavy hands, who knocked out Robbie Lawler, who we just saw fight this past weekend, who knocked out Nico Price, and nobody expected that to happen, including myself, right? Well, you know what? Logan Paul or Jake Paul knocked the hell out of Tyrone Woodley. And that right there was just like, okay, you know what? Payday, boys. And look what happened after that. They just keep climbing up the ladder. And then we got these MMA fighters that want to keep fighting the Paul brothers, more money. At the end of the day, they're prize fighters, right? Prize fighters. Right. And that's the goal of the mission. Prize fighters. If Bellator paid, as much money as they're paying, Conor McGregor, some people would jump over to Bellator, and some people stay at Bellator. Michael Chandler didn't stay at Bellator. Why? Because he wanted to see a greener front yard. You know what I mean? He wanted to go to the UFC and try to become the superstar, and he's that close to becoming that. And he's on a mission as well. When we're talking about missions to gold, Chandler doesn't need the belt; he needs Conor, prize fighter, prize fighting. Francis Ngannou, prize fighting. Tyson Fury, prize fighter. Boom, payday, retirement.
And you bring up something interesting as well, mentioning Bellator, because a lot, those paychecks aren't as heavy, but they do take very good care of their fighters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But also they keep that homegrown talent within. So now your prize fighters are your homegrown talent. And that is something that I'm curious now when we see what Francis Ngannou is, and became through the UFC, where he was this big monster. I mean, I remember seeing him fight in Chicago, and he looked like he walked off the set of Predator. I was like, who is this guy? And, he first round or second round knockout, he was a destroyer. And now, you would like to think that the UFC would be like, by any means necessary, biggest fight. And they do that 98% of the time. But this is a huge chunk of that 2%. And that 2%, I wonder just how damaging it could be for their future. 98% of the time, we get the fights that the UFC, that the fans want to see. We see that all the time. And they're not boxing. I will give them that. But sometimes you have that guy and you let that guy walk. And now he He just paved the way for fighters who are unhappy in any promotion to bet on themselves, i.e. Michael Chandler. I'm not saying Michael Chandler and Bellator weren't great together, because I know for a fact they were. But no pun intended, he found the gold at the end of the rainbow. He found his lucky charm. He's got the Ultimate Fighter, which he's been destroying, obviously, and that's pre-filmed. But, he's every week he's now engaged in a back and forth with Conor McGregor. Every week, Michael Chandler's stock goes up. And that's a guy who bet on himself. Francis Ngannou bet on himself. And my question to you is, do you think we'll start seeing more fighters bet on themselves? I'll throw in a third one, Nate Diaz.
Yeah,
he could have kept fighting. He could have kept fighting. He could have absolutely kept fighting. I would have signed up for Robbie Lawler, Nate Diaz, Robbie Lawler's retirement fight.
Oof.
I would have said, and you would have watched it.
That's exciting. That's
Your
exciting.
family would have watched it. Your neighbors would have watched it. Everybody would have watched it.
Yeah, we would have. You're right.
But you know what? Nate's like, I'm going to go box Jake Paul. I don't care what happens. I'm just going to go box him.
At the end of the day, that's how much money it's like at that age that Nate's at. That's the prize right there. You know what I mean? He could go fight and fight Robbie and whatever, but at the end of the day, you want to fight for the most amount of money at this point in your life, because you don't really have that many great years left ahead of you. So if you have that opportunity, you have to take it, and you have to take it while it's there. If you're 25, 26, you could chill. You could still fight in the UFC and fight the baddest, biggest guys in the world and, get that payday. But once you get to that top, that last chapter of your career in your prime, I want to say, not like, Robbie Lawler right now, who's not in his prime anymore. He's just retired, but he could go fight bare knuckle if he wants right now and make some more cash and whatnot and fight in different, he can do whatever he wants. And you're going to pay to watch it. People are going to pay to see him, and promotions are going to pay him to come fight for him, or fight for them, excuse me. So, the possibilities are endless, but to your question, I completely agree with you, man. Like this is going to open the door for fighters. And man, talking about this weekend, didn't Brandon Moreno look like a professional boxer times? Like with that hand speed, with that head movement, how fast he was connecting with Pantoja's chin with a broken hand, believe it or not. Like imagine if he didn't have a broken hand, if he didn't break, I think if Moreno doesn't break his hand in the first round, I actually think he win the fights. I think he couldn't break out of a bunch of clenches because he was working with one hand. I think Pantoja had tight clenches in there, and Moreno wasn't able to just outstrength him and get out of those clench positions. Why? Because he had a broken hand. He couldn't even throw it anymore. You know what I mean? Look, remember what happened to Uriah Faber when he broke both of his hands? Fighting. He was fighting with his elbows for the rest of the fight, but we all knew he was going to lose the fight. You break a hand, it's like breaking a leg in soccer. You can't run, you can't shoot, you can't pass. You're not playing, son. And in this case, Moreno is fighting a guy who he just simply could not break a hand against. You know what I mean? He needed to be the full Brandon Moreno to beat Pantoja, who's beat him twice previously, and he went down. But watching that fight, I'm thinking to myself, if Brandon Moreno really, really wanted to, which I don't think he wants to, I think he wants to get that belt back eventually, whoever he fights. I don't think he's going to be Pantoja, but whoever he ends up fighting down the line again for that belt, he might win it. And at that point, I think he already gave himself a path to say, I want to go do professional boxing and make more money.
Yeah, and you know what? That raises questions then. Does the UFC start looking at their pay scale and everything? And you know what? There's so much that can come out of it. But I want to stick, because we're sprinkling a little UFC 290. We are going to get into the meat and potatoes of that. But I want to stick with the PFL. It was just reported today that they are now bringing in USADA to run their drug testing program after 10 fighters have failed drug tests this year. Listen, I like the concept of the PFL. I like the PFL. I like a lot of their fighters. I think you would have had this in place as you made the move to ESPN, as you started cutting all these new contract deals. They got the Europe series with the Zone. Have this in place. Protect and not to, take from the actual sport and what we hear from referees, but if you're a promotion, protect yourself at all times. If I tell you 10 fighters failed drug tests, that means at least 10 fights were affected by the lack of institution you have for your drug testing program. I mean,
there's a method to the madness, right? I think there's always a method to the madness. And I think when you're a business owner and you have so much money behind these types of businesses, you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? You know the moves that you're throwing in there, the shadows, the shadow realm of the whole entire thing. You know what you can't see. Don't scratch my back type of thing. I'm not going to say this. You don't say that. They know that. At the end of the day, they knew what they're doing. And I think they wanted to roll with it until they couldn't roll with it. And once they actually saw, the darkness that comes with, with tainted fighters and with, cheating, guys winning who shouldn't be winning, guys fighting in the promotion that shouldn't be fighting in the promotion, guys doing things the wrong way. It starts putting a negative and bad perception on you. And perception is everything in this world, my friend. And as you know that, once you start losing fans, it's hard to get those fans back. And I think once you cross that line of like, you dirty cheating, type of promotion, people aren't going to want to pay for your fights, and people aren't going to want to watch your fights for free. So at this rate, they're trying to better their product. And I think they understand that if we want to become anything that we dream of becoming, we got to clean up the sport and kick out the cheaters.
Yeah. And you had the whole issue with them and the changing of the events and the result and getting Shane Burgos into the
God.
I mean,
God.
I mean,
shady business, right? Shady business right there.
We're talking on July 11th. Let's hope the rest of the year goes smoother, than the first half of the year for the PFL. But listen, it's a credit to them that they, and I'm going to go as far as to say, and I'm going to steal it from a good friend of mine who's a writing colleague of mine at My MMA News, and that's Blaine Henry on Twitter. He said, if Francis Ngannou were to beat Tyson Fury, he will never fight. He will never fight in the PFL. And I think that is a no-brainer statement, but I don't know if enough MMA fans are ready to have that conversation. I don't know if the PFL wants to have that conversation. Look, they're showcasing it, they're retweeting it, they're promoting the hell out of it, as they should. That's their guy. But
I think they'll do one fight. I think he'll give them one fight, because I think Francis Ngannou gave them their word that he'll do. Maybe, at the end of the day, he got what he wanted. But now, you have to give them something back for actually accepting it. I think he will fight at least one time with the PFL, just once though.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
It'll be a favor. You know what I mean? Here's what you get for doing what I wanted to, just one time.
Right.
And whoever he fights over there, he's gonna murk. You know what I mean?
Right.
At the end of the day, it's like, who doesn't need a fight? If he murks the best guy in the division, why does he need to fight anybody else? They might die in there, man. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens when you guys, there's levels to that game. And if you're not at the right level to fight Francis Ngannou, dude, it ain't getting punched in the face by a flyweight, let me tell you.
Well, I'm semi glad I don't have your job. I'm envious of your job because you do a great job of what you do. But sometimes I like to make outlandish statements like the one I'm about to make. And I would love to see phone lines and Twitter comments blow up for what I'm about to say, but I don't get that reaction. And that is, I want to say this gamble by Francis Ngannou to walk away from the UFC, demand everything for all fighters, insurance, long-term benefits, all of that. He walked away after his demands weren't met, and he went and he got this huge jackpot of a Tyson Fury fight, a PFL contract. He signed a great deal with the PFL that's going to really just raise the level of whoever he fights in the PFL with all the contract stipulations they agreed to. This is the best gamble, the best self-gamble in sports since Tom Brady left the New England Patriots. They said Tom Brady was done. They said he was, thank you, Tom, for everything, just like Dana White. Francis, we gave you opportunities. Thank you so much. You're the heavyweight champ. We're not going to come to terms. And with the new, right? And just like the New England Patriots, hey, Tom, thanks for everything. We truly appreciate it. We're going to let you have your wish. Yeah, go to Tampa. That's where all the old people go. And what happens? He goes in and wins another Super Bowl, and he just cements his legacy. And I think, again, Francis won. But if you could win the lottery 10 times over for 10 years straight, if he knocks down Tyson Fury, if he's competitive with Tyson Fury, he wins again and again and again. And if he wins the fight, I will go as far as to say it's the best self-gamble in sports history if he beats Tyson Fury. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm a little more realistic than that. But I would say Francis leaving the UFC and betting on himself is just like Tom Brady leaving the New England Patriots.
He won. Like you said, the gamble already paid off. The gamble was getting the fight, not winning the fight.
Right.
It was. At the end of the day, that's what it is. Do I think he's going to beat Tyson Fury? No. But at the end of the day, it's a fight. A punch could land and something crazy could happen, especially with the big boys. But that's what think about Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder packs a hell of a punch, right? How many guys did he knock out? He nearly knocked out Tyson Fury the first time they fought. And then he did the whole Undertaker thing and got right back up, which is insane. It was incredible. It's part of his legacy. You know what I mean? It's an unforgettable moment. When we are old men, our kids will literally watch that and they'll be like, oh, that's crazy. I'll be like, yeah, well, I remember that when I was this age. And that was nuts. It's gonna be on the same level as when Tyson ripped off his ear when it bit the ear. You know what I mean? A stain in the mind forever. And we were kids. And that's something we'll never forget. And that's going to be the same thing in the future when we talk about the craziness that happened with Francis Ngannou leaving the best MMA promotion in the world and going to fight professional boxing and changing the whole landscape and telling fighters that, hey, you can do this. You can get, the Floyd Mayweather fight. You can get the Fury fight. Just become a star in the MMA, become a big name, put on that whole entire shine under you. Let the world think that you are the best fighter to ever live, because boxers don't like that. Boxers don't like to hear that these MMA fighters are the best fighters in the world, because a boxer is going to say, put your feet away, put your legs away, put your elbows away. Let's actually just use our hands. And they know that they could beat any fighter, in the UFC or in a Bellator or any MMA promotion. So, and then they're not known, their names aren't known. How many great boxers' names want to be as big as these MMA fighters that don't make nearly as much money as they do? They make more money, but nobody knows their names. So it's like, they want that shine. Tyson Fury wants that shine. Tyson Fury doesn't want to fight Francis Ngannou to beat him up. Tyson Fury wants to beat Francis Ngannou to say, hey, I'm the best in the world, not that guy. Let me whoop his ass so everybody can see who's the best. And that's me. And that's Tyson Fury right there. He wants to let the world know that the Furies run the fight world.
The thing I love about this matchup the most is it's not Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather. It's not a spectacle. It is just going to be a good old fashioned boxing match. And it's two heavyweights, and the boxing heavyweights bring out every single fan in the world. And even if you're not a fan, you're going to watch it because it's two big boys swinging. But great stuff from Francis. I'm really happy for him. But UFC 290, we've been talking about it. I would say one of the best cards, definitely in recent history, but without a doubt in the history of the UFC. I mean, we've already talked about Brandon Moreno and the Pantoja fight, but looking at the main event, Alexander Volkanovski, and just his masterclass of Yair Rodriguez. But let's start early, Bo Nickel. I mean, what a way to start. What a way to start, right? Hey, Bo, we're going to get our card started. And he just does that. Now, look, I think we have to talk subjectively when talking about Bo Nickel. I think he is a future UFC champion. But every time he fights, I'm like, I want to see what's next. I want to see what's more. It's very similar to me, like Khamzat Chimaev when he fought Gilbert Burns. You're like, oh, he can go the distance. He doesn't just run through everyone. I'm ready to crown Bo Nickel champion today. But wouldn't you like to see him get in one of those wars?
Yeah, no, I need to see him fight Khamzat. I gotta see him fight Khamzat in middleweight. I gotta see him fight the top. Khamzat's not even the top dog in top 4 right now to me. I think he's right outside, but he to me is an excellent young fighter who let's see if you're about that life. Like same thing with Gilbert Burns. You know what I mean? Like, let's see if Khamzat's about that life. He was about that life, but so is Gilbert Burns. They're both about that life. So let's throw him in there first to see if Bo Nickel, do I think he's about that life? I do. He didn't wrestle against his opponent this time. Could he have wrestled and finished a fight on the floor? He could have, but he wanted to make a statement and use his hands and not implement any wrestling unless he absolutely had to, which I found kind of terrifying. I found that to be like, okay, when you do that against a guy coming on 3 days notice, very dangerous. You know what I mean? Not too much studying. He looked at the tape a little bit and he said, I'm going to wreck this guy in every area. That's easier said than done. You could say that, but once the fight goes and once it starts and once the guy gives you the stare down and you kind of feel his energy and you kind of feel that, like, I'm going to go for broke type of thing, you start to wonder a little bit. It's just like, what if he does connect? Then you watch the tape, and we saw Val Woodburn's tape over the last couple of days prior to the fights. How many great highlights of Woodburn did we see with the massive takedowns, him kind of swinging these big arms, big heavy punches. It's like, whoa, this guy, has guts. He's not going to be a little timid in there and be afraid of the moment. And he wasn't afraid of the moment. Bo Nickel took the moment from him. The fight started and Val was ready to get down. He was ready to get down. He was ready to go in there and go for broke. And he did, but he got caught. And man, if you saw Bo Nickel set up, kind of the first left hook where he connected, he gave him the 2 feints and then he exploded the 3rd time. So it was almost like, let's see if you're ready. Let's see if you're ready. Okay, gotcha. It's over.
Yeah.
He literally gave him 2 feints, and the 3rd one, he wasn't feigning. He went all in, and it was quick as hell. It was quick as hell, and it was accurate. It was accurate.
I think he's the future of any division he wants to be, quite honestly. And I think you look at guys like I mentioned, Khamzat. I look at a Sean O'Malley. I just look at Bo Nickel as I want similar paths, right? I want just beat up whoever you want right now. But eventually, all the crowd, the fans, the media, they're going to start calling after 5, 6, 7 fights. All right, hey, can we get him some real competition? Then you're going to get that top 3, that top 5, or maybe the title shot. And
yeah, what about Paulo? What about Paulo Borrachina in middleweight?
Right.
Let's see if fight Paulo. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
a guy who he could probably take down, but at the same time, good luck taking him down. You know, let's see you actually get him down first.
Yep.
Nobody wants to fight Paulo. You know, you don't want to fight Paulo until you have to fight Paulo. You know,
exactly. And
everybody
just like,
thinks they could beat Paulo until it's just like, all right, you got to fight him now. Let's go.
Just like a lot of people don't want to fight Robert Whittaker until you're Dricus du Plessis and you go in and put on a show. I mean, great performance. I'm going to be very honest. I didn't find it all that surprising. I think people, as much as you want to love Robert Whittaker and give him all the respect and the respect he does deserve, these wars he has been in, they take a toll on somebody. I don't care how good you are. I know you're only as good as your last fight, but sometimes I think fans and definitely gamblers want to be like, nah, dude, it's Robert Whittaker. Like, no, like sometimes you have to think. Sometimes the unknown is unknown for a reason, especially on the gambling side, because they want to take your money. You know what I mean? And to me, you know, I'm not big on, I mean, really, I don't MMA gamble because I cover the sport, you know. For me, I look at a line and it's like Dricus was plus 230, I think, on fight day. That to me, easy take that. If you're a gambler, I would have told everyone to take that. And I think the unfortunate thing is we should sit here and we should have 3-4 minutes to talk about du Plessis' win and how great it was.
Unfortunately, it was my favorite fight of the night.
Unfortunately, overshadowed by the Adesanya face-off.
Gross.
Listen, I've been thinking about this, and I think Chael Sonnen made a good point. I think Conor McGregor should be a little worried. Israel Adesanya is if Conor McGregor is 1A, I'm ready to crown Izzy Adesanya as 1B as the biggest UFC superstar. And I think in order to say that, you have to be someone who's around the sport. Because Israel Adesanya has gotten to that line, that fine line between promotion and, oh shit, what are we saying right now, Izzy? And that's definitely what we got at UFC 290. But I don't know if it's completely out of character. And you have to know the context. And I'm not defending him. I'm not defending him at all. But you have to understand that, you know, the whole du Plessis saying he's the real African and all of that. And, you know, he wants to bait him in there. And it's very much a mental warfare that unfortunately goes back to the Conor Khabib rivalry. And that was bad. I don't think du Plessis or Adesanya are attacking a bus, but this is going to be an interesting promotion leading up to this.
No, man, it is. Do I like this type of promotion? I don't. You know, I don't think that we need to categorize and say what you are and where you're from and all that nonsense. It's 2023. You know, maybe this rolled in the 90s. You know, I think about Oscar De La Hoya. I think about Floyd Mayweather. You know, we've seen this movie before. This isn't the first time they're writing this script of like where you're from and what you're representing. You know, Floyd Mayweather walked in with Mexico, you know, a sombrero and everything. You know, it's like, come on, man. It doesn't get much more disrespectful than that. You could say this and then you could say that. But if you show up on fight day, you know, rocking Mexican colors when you're fighting a Mexican, think about it. That's it doesn't get, you know, that's a different level. What Izzy did. Yeah, did he lose his mind? Sure. But if you ask the older generation who's above us, all they see is nonsense and money. You know, I spoke with my father about this and he's just like, oh God, that's just selling the fight. Stop believing all the nonsense. He's selling the fight for dollar bills. He's like, all this drama, all this, that. You guys are young. He's like, when you're older, you're going to realize this again. It's all about money. And at the end of the day, whoever wins, those guys are going to end up hugging each other and kissing each other on the side of the cheek saying, thank you so much. I don't mean the things that I say, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to be friends forever. So don't believe the hype. This is about dollar bills and selling the fight. And it makes me think. And I'm just like, no, that's not true. Look, Izzy's actually pissed. He's actually really pissed off that he said that. He's not African and blah, blah, blah. But then you actually think about it. And it's just like, you know what? There's a lot of dollar bills coming in with this now. There's a lot of people that are going to buy this fight who have never watched an MMA fight in their life. They're boxing guys, but at the end of the day, this whole little rivalry thing about being African and not being African and breathing African air, you're going to buy the pay-per-view. It's kind of the same thing that Conor McGregor did, right? With Jose Aldo, when he sold the belt off the table and, you know, the whole persona that he gave, I'm going to desecrate you, you Brazilian, blah, 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 blah.
You're right.
I bought the fight. I bought the fight in the heartbeat, man. But
Right.
I'm hardcore. My friends bought the fight. They don't even watch MMA at the time. They were just getting into it. They were Max Holloway fans in Hawaii and whatnot. But it's just like, nah, you know what? This time I'm going to buy a not Max Holloway fight. This time I'm going to watch this whole entire Conor McGregor. I hope he loses. You're pretty much buying a card to hope to see Conor McGregor lose. He'd even fight Aldo. He ended up fighting Mendez.
Right.
And you bought the fight.
Well, and here's a funny thing in comparison, right? Izzy's having his McGregor moment when he's already an established star. So now if he goes through and beats Duplessis, we are, I think, without a doubt, unless Conor does something crazy and he actually does fight Michael Chandler and knocks Michael Chandler out and takes back and whatever. I don't think it's a stretch to say by the end of 2023, Israel Adesanya is not only the biggest star in the MMA world, he's the biggest star in combat sports, given if he beats Duplessis. But it should be an interesting fight. We had a great fight of the year contender, we thought, in Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker until Moreno and Pantoja. I mean, Dan Hooker, I mean, if you don't want to have a beer with that guy, I don't know what you want to do. Big shout out to Oscar Willis and Dan Hooker doing pub talk immediately after. That's incredible. But I want to talk about the main event, and then I want to give you a couple moments to promote all that you do because you do great work.
Sure,
Alexander Volkanovski, I mean, we're talking a division. Yeah, I won't. You know what? I'm gonna be real here. You can't include Conor McGregor in the greatest featherweights of all time. You just can't, because at this point there are so many other fighters: Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, and now Alexander Volkanovski, who have so many numerous title defenses that you're like, oh, it's like a brand new car coming out, but in your garage you got 3 muscle cars from the 70s and they run better than the 2023 Ferrari. You're like, that thing is great. It rides great. That's Conor McGregor. It was a great ride. But then you're like, I got 3 old reliables in the garage. And that's how I see Aldo, Holloway, and Volkanovski. But now the question is, he got the pound for pound title. And you know what? For what it's worth, I'm going to side note here. Him and John Jones will continue to go 1-2, 1-2 until one of them loses. They are, without a doubt, the 2 best pound for pound fighters on planet Earth. And I don't think there's a debate there. Now, that'll be interesting, and that's kind of a compliment to them both. But are you ready to say Alexander Volkanovski, greatest featherweight champion of all time?
Yeah, no, I am. I am ready to say that Volkanovski is the best featherweight champion of all time. I know it's going to piss some people off. I know he still needs to defend the belt many more times like Aldo did in order to get that title. But at the end of the day, I think if Volkanovski and Aldo fought each other at their prime, I think Volkanovski would win. I think Volkanovski has lots of strengths when it comes to MMA. He's very disciplined. He keeps his composure. He doesn't put himself in danger too much. He has a lot of power for the featherweight division, and he's not cutting loads of weight and getting there in an unhealthy fashion. He's actually a natural 145er who is just different, man. And I kind of gotta disagree with you on one little thing about Conor McGregor. You know, I do think that Conor McGregor, I don't want to say he's the best featherweight to ever live or put him in that echelon, because he didn't fight at featherweight long enough, like you said. But at the end of the day, he's one of the best MMA fighters to ever live. Why? Because of what he did going back and forth and beating Alvarez the way that he did. But look who he actually beat in the featherweight division. He beat Max Holloway. He didn't just beat him. He beat him up pretty good. He beat him up pretty good. And I was in Hawaii, you know, when he did that. And everybody thought Max Holloway was this. And Max Holloway's my favorite, if not, you know, top 3 favorite fighters of all time. You know, I got to live in Hawaii for 12 years. I covered Max, you know, before he was even fighting with the UFC. It was what really led me into loving MMA was living in Hawaii and learning MMA through the Hawaiian eyes and learning how deep, you know, MMA goes through Hawaii. So seeing Conor, you know, fight, his style and the way that he fights, you know, I think he fights with a lot of spirit. I think he fights with a lot of there's pureness behind the way that he fights. I think his style is just amazing. You know, when it comes to grappling and takedown defense, is he superb? No, but at the end of the day, man, what he did to Aldo, the way that he did it, knocking him out the way that he did, telling everybody the way that he was going to do it was superb. You know, it's something that nobody's ever going to forget, man. And then he beat Mendez, and he wasn't even training for Mendez. He was training for Aldo. And next thing you know, you have to fight an all-American type of wrestler. You know what I mean? That's scary. Chad Mendez took him to the ground, you know, cut him up with his elbows. And what did Conor do? He got back up and finished Mendez. Literally finished him. No more. Chad was done. Finished him. And then he beat Aldo. Did he have the easiest route to get? Did he have a hard route to get there? No, because along that route, Max probably was one of his toughest opponents prior to getting to that Mendes fight, in my opinion. But still, yet what he did to the top echelon of the division was so fast, bro. It was just it's kind of crazy.
And I take nothing away from Conor. Trust me, I think his title fight against Eddie Alvarez, one of the greatest title fight performances of all time.
Flawless.
He obviously changed the game in terms of superstardom, money, all of that. He will forever go down as one of the greatest fighters of all time. I just think when I look back and I look at who did it, just like Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, there are other great 185-pound champions. Chris Weidman, right? Sure. But man, Adesanya is doing it for so long. Silva did it for so long. And it's just one of those things where I don't want to be that guy who sounds like a casual that says title defenses define the champion. But it's just time and time and time and time again. It gets to the point where you're like, who is going to beat Volkanovski? So that's my last question before I let you plug the hell out of your show, because I don't want to keep it too much longer. But man, who the hell is going to beat Alexander Volkanovski? Because if you put a gun to my head, he did beat Islam Makhachev earlier this year. Got the poster right over there. And I believe they're going to run it back. And you know what? Ilir Topuria is a great fighter. He's a very damn good fighter. But you know what? Sorry. I need Volkanovski and Makhachev too. I need that before anything else. I know Charles Oliveira is not going to be ready. And I also know one thing, Volkanovski, like you said, he's different. He's a gamer. He's only going to be out reportedly 6 to 8 weeks. Give me that fight in October. Give me that fight in October. Put it on the Abu Dhabi card. I guarantee you 100%, 80%, 65% Volkanovski is better than any other fight they can put on right now with Charles Oliveira on the sidelines. Give me Volkanovski no matter what condition. I need to see that fight again.
I want to see him fight Topuria first, just because I think it will raise Volkanovski's stature even higher, because he keeps going back. If he keeps going back and forth, you're kind of stringing along the lightweight division, and you shouldn't string along Charles Oliveira either, especially what he just did to Beneil Dariush. I think Charles deserves that rematch against Islam first. Why? His history, how great he is. He can actually win that fight, and he deserves it. You have to respect Charles Oliveira when he says he wants that fight after what he just did to Beneil, coming off of a loss. People could say all they want, but getting back in that octagon after you come off of a loss, when you've been winning for years, for a big gap in time, it's hard to get in there, man. Look at Francis Ngannou.
Right.
Look what happened to Francis Ngannou after he lost for the first time. He was not the same fighter, bro. When he fought Derek Lewis, it's one of the worst fights I've ever seen in my entire life. It still is. I can't believe I watched that. I can't believe I told people to bet on Francis Ngannou. I can't believe I was at a work event telling, look at this guy. This guy's going to go nuts right here. This guy is the tits. He's everything. Get him on. Watch this fight. And they don't throw a punch. I look like a moron out there, but that's what a loss does for you. Let's put the whole thing into a big perspective. Let's stop looking at it through a journalist's eyes. Let's stop looking at it through, reporter's eyes. Let's look at it through an athlete's eyes. Let's look at it as, I just lost one of the biggest games of my life, or biggest fight of my life, after you've been winning. And think about the psychological damage and the fear and the confidence that it takes out of you going to bed at night the next day. You're not the same guy. You're not the same person. So it's a different type of journey to get back into the octagon. And it's a different type of journey to get a win. And that's what Charles did. That's why I think it's so impressive. I actually bet against Charles, and I'm an idiot because I'm so mad at myself, because everybody thought Poirier was going to beat Charles. And I'm just like, no. And then everybody thought Gaethje was going to beat Charles. And it's just like, no, Charles is that good. And then here comes this fight against Beneil. And I'm just like, oh no, Beneil's going to beat Charles. It goes against everything that I thought about Charles for the last 3 years. And it's just like, you moron. And I got that same feeling after I picked Dariush. I'm like, you idiot. How could you make this the mistake that you told everybody not to make prior to this one? Why? Because of a loss, because of Islam. Right. And that's what was so impressive to me about Charles, was just getting back in there and winning in the way that he did, bro. And even getting taken down in the fight, and Beneil kind of being in that dominant position, and Charles being able to get up and not even have any fear and finishing the fight. That's special. So he deserves the Islam fight, and Topuria deserves the fight against Volkanovski after the damage that he just did to Josh Emmett. And that's why Volkanovski also said, don't fight Max don't fight Max, because then Max will steal all my shine, which he's been doing forever. Volkanovski's kind of jealous of Max, in my opinion. And he's probably going to say, F you, Mathias, if he ever heard this, like, screw you, idiot. But it's the truth, in my opinion, because he always talks about Max. He always says, how many times did he say Max's name in the interview? Don't fight Max, don't fight Max. Because he knows it's like you're only going to give Max more shine. And Volk's always going to be the guy just sitting there waiting for Max Holloway to come fight him again. And nobody's going to want to watch that fight, including me. I don't need to watch Volk Max 4.
Nobody does. Nobody does. And fights with Max change people outside of Volkanovski, unless it made him a better fighter. Well, we don't know, but
it definitely did, bro. I think that second fight against Max knocked him down twice, and I think Max won that fight. That second fight, I thought Max won that fight, and I'm not trying to be biased. The damage that he put on Volkanovski in that fight is not the same damage that Volkanovski put on Max. And if they fought today, I kind of think the rules changed a little bit since that fight. Because back then it was like the point system and not damage, and now it's damage and not points. Right. So, it depends who's judging the fight, right?
Well, let's keep LA Bird away from those big fights. But Mathias, talk to me about Hit the Bell. Tell me everything that you're doing.
Hey, man, we're at Sports Grid right now. You could hear me 6 nights a week on Sirius XM 159 with Gabriel Morency on Sports Rage late night, Sports Grid radio networks and television networks. We kick ass over there. Break down all types of sports, not just wagering. We get in deep. We talk about all sorts of stuff and analyze games. We have a lot of fun. And that's midnight to 3 a.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Pacific time. And if you're in San Diego, that's in the mightier 1090 1090 a.m. over here in California and kind of in the Southwest region. Also Sirius XM 159. And then we have Hit the Bell with me, Mathias Berbel. We usually release the shows on Wednesdays or Thursdays. Great guests every single week. Fighters, MMA fighters from all different promotions. Right now, we've been interviewing a lot of UFC fighters right now because the UFC's been on fire. And then we get gambling guys on. This week we're going to have Minty Bets from the UFC. And we're going to have a lot of fun this week, kind of break down the upcoming fight card that we have. UFC Vegas, Holly Holm should be a blast. Buena Silva should be a good time. So Minty Bets will be on. And you can follow me at Hit Berbel on Twitter, and also Hit the Bell with Mathias Berbel through Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We talk tennis, we talk MMA. Wimbledon's on right now, so I love to chat some Wimbledon right now. I'm a big tennis guy. I'm a big soccer guy. Also played soccer in college and whatnot, so we could always chat soccer. And I'm very passionate about soccer, so we could always chat that. Let's go.
I love it, man. Matthias, thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little long, but that's what great conversations do, and I appreciate your time.
How long? That was like 10 minutes, bro. What do you mean that was long? We could keep going, bro.
You can come on this show whenever you want, man. And who knows, maybe I'll be in your neck of the woods by the end of the year. I know Cage Warriors just announced another show in California. That's a little intriguing. I've never been.
Love that promotion.
I've never been west, brother. I've never been west of Illinois. I'm in Chicago right now, lining up to go to South Dakota for Bellator 298. So
nice.
You've got an avid fan and listener in me. I respect a lot of the work you do. Can't wait to hear this week's episode, and I appreciate making time for me today.
Nah, man, you're the best. I can't wait to come back on your show. Hell of a job. Let's keep chopping it up. And at the end of the day, MMA wins.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.